it all came crumbling down because Google found my whole network. As soon as you hit that 10, 20, sometimes $30,000 a month, you're going to start to feel the squeeze. If you're at that, let's say you're at that stage, let's call it that death zone right now, I would start to be thinking about like,
Nathan, I've heard you mention the whole $10,000 to $30,000 per month death zone for agencies. Why do you think so many agencies get stuck at this revenue level, and what key things would you give to break through that?
oh, well, there's definitely a lot of reasons, but we can kind of break them down to a couple core reasons. So, and the only reason why I know this is because I got stuck in that spot, and I actually got stuck even higher up and kind of hit that plateau region. And it was my own anecdotal experience. But then as I started to work with other agency owners, I started to see some trends working with a lot of people. And so one of the things, and this might not be what you would expect, but one of the things that can really stall out an agency is working on too many different types of campaigns. And so this happens a lot where, like, whenever we, at least for me personally, I'm speaking for myself here, but when I started my agency, my number one goal was just to make as much money as possible and try to get cash flow so I could just pay my bills. For me, that's what I was doing. So with that intent, I took on everyone. It didn't matter, right? It didn't matter if it was a plumber or e-commerce, store or whatever it was. I took it on with some restrictions. There were some crazy niches I wouldn't take, but for the most part, I was taking pretty much everyone. Now, in the beginning, that's a good idea. Like when you're trying to generate cash flow, you're trying to survive. You should do that. You shouldn't be like, I'm only going to work with a specific niche. It's like, well, you don't even have a client yet. So let's get some wins under our belt first here. So I think for anyone who's starting, that's a good idea. Just bring it on, get the cash flow, and start to build a nice portfolio of results, get the experience. It's all good. But there's a downside to this. And the downside is as soon as you hit that 10, 20, sometimes $30,000 a month, you're going to start to feel the squeeze. And the reason is because if you're working with a lot of different types of businesses, every time you bring on a new client, it's like starting from scratch. So if you work with all the same industry, it's much more streamlined. You know how to work with plumbers, or you know how to work with lawyers. Like you just know exactly what to expect in those campaigns, which allows you to actually scale. So the first reason why I personally think people get stuck is not picking a niche, right? They're just, whatever comes my way, I'm going to do it. And it's just kind of like a constant uphill battle. And so I think if you're at that, let's say you're at that stage, let's call it that death zone right now. I would start to be thinking about like, okay, who do I like working with right now? What are the campaigns that are the most profitable? They pay the biggest amount of money. I get them the best results. Like start to think about that. And also, what industries do you like working in? Like maybe you enjoy working more with plumbers as opposed to working with chiropractors, right? So figure out what that is. And then you can slowly start to transition into maybe a much more niche focused strategy. And I think sometimes when I give this advice, people are like, okay, I got to burn my whole agency to the ground and start from scratch. And I'm like, no, you don't need to do that. You can have your like mother entity, right? Is what I'd like to call it. So let's say like a Neil Patel Digital, all right? Very broad, going after a lot of stuff. But then you have your like vertical specialized, agency. And that's just so you can get hyper focused on one ideal client profile. So that's the first thing for me personally. If you want to kind of ask me some questions on that point, but that's kind of like the first one I think is the biggest. And there's others as well. So we can kind of dive in where you want to go.
Awesome. And let's say somebody's running an agency right now and they're kind of a generalist agency. They're serving all kind of clients, all kind of niches. What advice would you give to somebody picking a niche?
Well, so this is a question I get quite frequently, and I have kind of developed somewhat of a quantifiable way to do this because it used to be like, oh, just pick a niche you like working with, or pick the ones that are the highest value. Those are all good things in general. But a couple things for me on it. Let's say on the quantifiable metrics. So number one is working in industries that have a high customer value. That's really, really important. So working with a personal injury lawyer versus working with someone who sells hot dogs. You got to really think about this, because to get a return on investment with a personal injury lawyer, even though there's, let's say like for St. Louis personal injury lawyer, you take that one keyword phrase, I'd say at max, you're looking at between 300, maybe 400 searches a month if you combine all keyword variations, right? So not a ton of search demand, but if you get them just one client out of that search demand, it could be worth 100,000, sometimes multiple millions of dollars just for one client. So it's much easier to get someone a return on investment when they make that much money compared to, okay, I got to try to get a return on investment for this hot dog stand. I'm going to need a lot of traffic and a lot of sales to be able to do this. So this is one thing you can do to actually determine like what your pricing should be based on the niche that you're working in. So you can actually take like their lifetime value and then ultimately like you can calculate the return on investment. So in most cases, you want to basically have like a bare minimum 3-to-1 ratio. So for every dollar that they spend on SEO, they should make $3 back. And so if that ratio is totally off, then you've got a problem. So like if it's like a 1-to-2 ratio or like it's really, really, really narrow, you're going to have some problems. And so what I'm looking for is like really big gaps, like to the point where like the ROI is huge for the client, right? And you can make adjustments on pricing just from that alone. So that's the first thing is like figuring out the LTV, lifetime value, and focusing on the industries where the customers are worth a lot. And so that's really a big one. And the other one, I was actually just talking about this yesterday in my group, but this one is, you can quantify this. You can use obviously the deep research function in ChatGPT or Gemini to kind of give you some historical precedent on this point. But looking at the recession-proof nature of certain industries. So for me, this one's really big because in a recession, everyone's probably going to get wrecked. Let's just be honest. There's like most businesses are going to hurt. We're all going to feel the pain. That's just the nature of recessions. But some industries get hurt a lot more than others. So for example, like in home services, you take that broad umbrella of home services, there's certain little sectors in home services that will do much better in a recession versus others. So like if you're a kitchen remodeler, you're going to have some trouble in a recession because people are going to stop making, they're going to stop investing in their homes and they'll be like, okay, let's cut things down. We're not doing any cosmetic stuff. We're done. Like, and it's just going to be bone dry. But if you're an HVAC company, it doesn't matter if there's a recession. If your furnace breaks, like you need to get that fixed or your family is going to freeze. So like you need to get that done. It doesn't matter. Right. So for what I'm thinking about is like, and I think we're in a really unique situation because I think most of us now at this point, since we're all here, we lived through COVID. So like that was a lot of crazy stuff happened. Like businesses were shutting down and you got to see the types of businesses that don't do well in a black swan event like that. So that's what I like to see is like, okay, what are these industries where like, if let's say if stuff hits the fan, we still have some bit, like we're not just going to go to zero is essentially what I'm looking for. And maybe I'm a little more doomsday focused, but I think it is important to think about because we're looking for stability, right? And I think in general, if you're going to pick a niche, you can't be thinking about in terms of like months or even a year that you're going to be investing in this. You should be thinking in terms of like 5 to 7 years type of investment, because that's how long it really takes to build a good business. So yeah, there's a lot of other things, but those are the kind of the core ones that I would be thinking about.
Awesome. And let's say for those agency owners that are still a bit resistant to the idea of specializing down and picking a niche, have you got any maybe fascinating stories or evidence that you share about the ROI of niching down?
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak to one of my close agency friends who's very public about his niching down, Chris Dreyer.
Yeah.
So, and he lives in St. Louis. We get together a lot, and he was hyper. He, like when he started his agency, he wasn't hyper focused. So he was doing exactly what everyone else is doing, very broad, taking everyone on, and then he made this decision to go all in on personal injury and like all in, not just kind of in, like all in to the fullest extent. And I mean, I've just seen his growth over the years, and it just keeps compounding and compounding to the point where now it's like when you think of personal injury SEO, you think of Chris. Like that's just in your mind. He's actually like planted that in people's minds now at this point because that's all he's been focused on. So the reason why that's so important is because I described earlier that it helps with fulfillment, right? It helps actually like delivering the service in a much more scalable way, but also it helps everything in the business. Like even your marketing gets better, right? So instead of, you go on, let's say you want to start driving leads through YouTube. Well, you go on YouTube and you're like, all right, I'm going to create a video, SEO checklist for 2025. Okay. Well, that's fine. But you're going to be competing against my channel and all the other channels that do broad SEO stuff. So you're not going to attract your ideal clients doing that. You're just going to get a bunch of broad stuff coming in. And I can tell you, whenever I put a form on any of my videos and I have like for agency stuff, I get all kinds of businesses coming in. So there's not a set amount of business, like a specific type of business that comes in. It's just literally everyone. But when it comes to the marketing, if you can niche down, you can structure your videos, structure your content to specifically call out that ideal client profile. So for example, instead of it being a SEO checklist, it can be an SEO checklist for chiropractors. Now, you're not going to become famous, you're not going to become an influencer, and you're not going to get hundreds of thousands of views doing this. You're not, but you're going to attract the right people to your videos and you're going to get leads, which I think for an agency, that's all that matters. So focusing on the right KPIs, I think, is important. So that's like the reason for niching down for me is like across everything. It's the marketing, it's the sales, it's the fulfillment. It's literally it makes every single element of the business easier. So yeah, I'm definitely bullish. Let's just say that much.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned Chris. We've had Chris on the podcast, and he's a client of ours as well. And he's so full on with everything. Like even just everything within the company is like a military operation. But the fact that he had people like Michael Phelps at his PIMCOM injury event, yeah, he's really taken the extreme on niching down.
And he doesn't do anything halfway. It's all the way in or nothing. So, and that's what I love about him. It's awesome. He's very inspiring to watch. So
definitely. Awesome. And Nathan, let's say, okay, in your experience, what's the single most effective strategy for doubling down on agency revenue?
So to increase revenue in general. Yeah. Okay. Well, the hands down, the number one is to sell more to your existing clients. So I think a lot of people, just because we're SEOs and we think about a lot of inbound and traffic and we get so focused on that, but the reality is an agency, like the way you really win is to increase the LTV of every individual client that you have. And so like to give you an example of this, like I won't name this agency, but let's just say a very big agency, $100 million per year agency, okay, out there. There's not many of them, so you could probably figure out which one it probably is. What they do is as soon as they sign on a client, let's say they sign them on for SEO, the account manager in that first month is already thinking about, okay, let's go and look at their Google ads. Let's go and look at their web design. Let's go and look at their social media. And what they're doing is the account manager is just a nice word for salesperson. So there's just the nice agency terminology, but really it's a salesperson. So, what they're doing is they're going and identifying gaps and weaknesses and all these opportunities. So then in their meeting the following month, say, hey, they go through all their stuff. And, hey, by the way, Joe, we actually did a quick free analysis on your Google ads and found like tons of money that you're leaving on the table. Right. So what they're going to do is they're going to slowly start chipping away and pulling these different services. And I like to say putting more hooks into that business to the point where it's nearly impossible to get rid of that agency because they do so much for the business. And the reason why this is also important is the stability of your agency. The more that you do for a business, the less likely they are to churn. It's just the nature of it. And I had to learn this the hard way because all I did was SEO, right? So I just did like focus on SEO, did nothing else. And that was an advantage in the sales side because I'd be like, I just do SEO. I'm better than, the Walmart of agencies over there, right? But on the back end, I was losing big time, right? So on the front end, I was winning. On the back end, I was losing because I wasn't offering these other services. In fact, I literally lost clients because I didn't do web design. I lost clients because I didn't do PPC. And they would be like, well, yeah, this other agency, they're not as good as you, but we need a new site design. And they said that they would also do SEO and PPC. So we'll just go with them, right? And that's what businesses do. They would much rather work with an agency that they can just say, you know what? Okay, here's the investment. Take care of all this. I don't want to think about it. Even if they're not as good. So I think that's really like the best place to focus is thinking more about like that horizontal scaling. So thinking about the other supporting services that you can add, especially now with how crazy SEO is. I think it's important to be, adding some layers. So that's the first technique for sure. We can talk more about that. I know there's a lot in there. So
Awesome. I love that. I was in Miami for Ryan Stewart's agency acquisition boot camp in November. And that was one thing he mentioned. He was like, you need to start learning about how to upsell your current clients. And he talked about how he was working with his clients where he'd bring them in, let's say 50 calls a month. And then you'd find out that like half of them weren't even, the sales guys weren't even showing up to half of them. So it was like, can we offer you sales training? Can we offer you all of this stuff? And again, I don't know if it's a limiting belief, but in my head, it was like, does that not dilute your service? Because I feel like if you're, as you said, an SEO guy, that's what you do. That's what we do. But yeah, I feel like that's a limiting belief. I'm still trying to like get my head around, but I think it's great advice.
yeah, and I think in general, like it's still good to position yourself towards a particular discipline. So like for example, you're like, let's say you're the SEO guy for chiropractors. Like that's who you are. That's your front end identity. But on the back end with your team and the way you structure is like, okay, yeah, we got them in for SEO, but let's start thinking about how do we layer more stuff on. So we're even like trying now to sell packages that include Google ads and local service ads baked into it. So that way they're already used to it. Like, oh, I see we're getting SEO and local service ads and Google ads kind of baked in already. So taking a little bit out of the SEO budget per se and allocating it towards that to kind of get the client used to that. So yeah, just a tactical way you can do it. Yeah.
Awesome. And Nathan, if we move on a bit more to AI and the future of agencies. So Nathan, what's the biggest task you're using for AI right now to buy back your time?
Oh my gosh, so many things. Wow, we could spend a whole call just on this alone. I'll say this. This is what I don't do. Okay, I think there's a lot, and I have nothing against this, by the way. It's just not my style personally. I'm not a fan of the whole like let's build a crazy automation system that like does all this intense like using the AI to rewrite AI content to make it more human. I don't do all that stuff. I just, for me, it's much more simple than that. Like if we want the content to be more human, I just have a human writer write it. So I don't have to do it, any of that crazy automation. It's just much easier in my opinion. But as far as like the things that I think are actually real use cases that actually can help like the agency scale, I would say right now the biggest one is a deep research function. I just love that tool because technically it is agents. It's just in a more productized way. And it is just so beautiful for so many reasons, even on the link building front. Before you would have to do link prospecting and it was incredibly time consuming. Not only did you have to go and find all the link prospects, then you had to qualify the link prospects. Then you got to go and find the contact information. It was a really long process and you like needed a full-time person just to do that across all the campaigns. Deep research, I mean, in about 7 to 10 minutes, we'll find tons of link opportunities and contact information and tell you if it's a good fit, all within like 7 to 10 minutes. So like a small example would be like if you wanted to get donation links for a chiropractor in St. Louis, you could run that exact prompt inside for the deep research and have it find all those opportunities for you in St. Louis. It'll even give it the price. Like, okay, this one's 50, this one's 100, like, and then you just go and reach out. It's that simple. And I'm sure at some point you can technically probably do this with AI right now, like have the outreach be sent out, but that's still, I still have humans intervening at that point. So that's just one small idea. And there's so many others. Obviously NLP is a big one. So, my tool Rankability, we're using AI to extract entities from the top ranking competitors for any keyword, right? So I use my tool obviously on a daily basis to do that, to create highly relevant content. And so that's another big one. And then the others, more not so often, but will use it pretty frequently, is building out link bait, is another common one. So like building out free software, free tools for the clients to function as link bait. Like the coding capabilities of AI are just unreal. Like I'd say out of all the things that it can do, that's like, if you're not using it for coding, I just don't know why you wouldn't. It's just insane. So yeah, there's a lot.
Quick pause. If you're getting value from this conversation about scaling agencies and hiring top talent, I want to share something that might help you. Are you struggling to find A players for your digital marketing agency? We've got you covered. For SEO experts who turn rankings into revenue, head to SEOforhire.co. For paid media specialists who boost your bottom line, check out paidmediajobs.com. And if you're looking for foot rubs, you're definitely in the wrong podcast. All right, let's jump back into the episode. Awesome. I love it. And likewise, I feel like I could talk about this with you for a whole day.
Yeah.
How do you see the future of agencies with the rise of AI in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. I really do. And I always go back to thinking about, like, this is something that Jeff Bezos has said in the past, where when he's thinking about his business, he's thinking about whatever projects they're working on, like, what are the things that are not going to change? And like, because it seems all the time, it's like a tidal wave of change constantly. New AI model, new AI company. Like, it's just like, it makes your head explode. And then you've got influencers who are always saying, like, Google's dead and this is dead and that's dead. And so it's like, well, what's alive? I don't know what's going on anymore. It's so overwhelming with the amount of change, along with the content, with people trying to drive awareness. So it's just a lot of confusion. But I think there's some kind of core things. And this is why I love agency so much, and why I teach people to continue to want to build agencies, SEO, digital marketing, whatever it is, because of one core reason. And this is because I've worked with so many businesses. I know this is a universal fact. Okay. Businesses, no matter what technology comes, no matter what AI model comes, it will not make a difference, because businesses simply do not have the time and resources to do marketing. It is, and I'm talking about small businesses. You can go enterprise level. They certainly have it. They can hire in-house teams and do all that. Bigger SaaS companies that are well-funded, they can build teams out as well. But I'm talking about your standard local businesses, like an HVAC company. They just got to do good HVAC work, and their focus is on that. They don't want to think about building an internal marketing team. That's just so outside of their realm that they don't want to deal with that. So this comes back to a core idea that's from Dan Kennedy, which is, if you know how to get a business more customers, you'll never be broke. And so I think about that a lot. And that was actually the original reason why I started doing client services, because I was like, okay, if I learn how to do SEO, I can get businesses more customers, therefore I'll never be broke. That was like my line of reasoning as to why I should go all in on offering SEO services. And now that's still true. Nothing's changed. And that's the thing, is like, agency is a safe model because it helps businesses get more customers. And what the tactics we use, the way we do that, that's all going to change, guaranteed. That, like, the way we do stuff is certainly going to change. But like, that core thing that we do, the reason why an agency is valuable, and as long as we're in a capitalistic society, that is going to be the thing, right? And so I don't see that changing very much, at least for a very long time. So I can't predict the future, but based on history, that seems to be the thing that's going to stick around. So yeah, that's why I'm pretty bullish on it. Yep.
Awesome. I love that. It's quite a positive answer to that. There's a lot of people talking doom and gloom when it comes to those questions. So that's great. Nathan, what's been your most expensive lesson in your agency or career life that the listeners could try and avoid?
Oh man, I've made a lot of expensive lessons. Geez, let me think through this. I would say this one's not necessarily an expensive, like monetarily lesson, but I'd say the one that definitely that made me pivot the most was definitely when I transitioned from being basically a gray hat, black hat SEO to being much more white hat and safer, right? And what I mean white hat is not like, okay, I listen to Google and I praise Google and I listen to every word. It's not that at all. It's more that I just don't use as artificial methods that are much more likely to get me or my clients penalized. And so before, what I used to do was all artificial. Like, everything was artificial. I would build private blog networks. I would use Web 2.0s. Like, all my link building was purely artificial, not real at all. Like I wasn't, I wouldn't even pay for a link on a real website. Like I'd be like, no, I'm just going to build like 7 websites that I can just drive links. It's much better. I can control it, all that stuff. But then it all came crumbling down because Google found my whole network. so when Google found my whole network, not only did they just, destroy the whole network, basically de-index it and everything, but they penalized every site that I was linking out to from that network. And so that included my own websites, that included my clients' websites. So like I woke up one day and it was like just a flood of manual actions in my inbox. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be a really interesting day today. And I was just trying to think through like, okay, what am I going to do here? And like the first thing that came to my mind was like, okay, I'm never going to let this happen again. So that was like step number 1. Like, like Warren Buffett says, like, if you're trying to get yourself out of a hole, like stop digging. So that's like step number 1. I'm just going to stop digging. And then step number 2 is I'm going to try to get these manual actions removed. Right. And so what I did is I went through the whole process. I removed all the links and then I submitted, reconsideration requests with Google. Thankfully, I got every single manual action removed, every single one, which I don't know if I would be that lucky in today's day and age, but back then, for whatever reason, I was able to do that. But that was like a huge turning point for me because I like legitimately when that happened, I'm like, I think I'm going out of business. Like my mind, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this. This is like 2015 when this happened. I was only like 2 years into my business. So I was like, whoa, I really messed up badly. And so that's why like from that point forward, basically I just moved much more towards content-centric driven SEO. Not to say I don't do link building. I'm big on link building, but it's just more of like my lead domino for all of SEO success begins with content. And that's actually worked really well. I haven't been penalized since. So it's just, it's just a safer, maybe won't drive results as fast as maybe some other aggressive techniques. But it does have sustainable results. So yeah, pros and cons. But for me, my risk tolerance, I can't handle that stuff anymore. So yeah.
Awesome. And Ethan, if we move on to client acquisition and retention, we've touched on it a bit so far, but I've seen in your previous podcast that you talk about how you've got over a 50% close rate with your proposal template. What are the key elements that make a winning agency proposal?
Yeah, it took me a while to kind of get to that point. It's funny. I don't believe it's so much the proposal, believe it or not. I think the proposal is one piece of what drives, let's say, a 50% close rate. I think another piece, which I don't think you hear a lot of people talk about, is just pure conviction, which to me in sales is the ultimate sales device. You can take someone with the same proposal and put someone with a lot of conviction, someone with very little, and have a very different close rate. And so I think that's the first one is like, you really genuinely have to believe in what you're selling. You have to really believe that you can drive results for the person that you're talking to. And here's a little secret to my close rate is I only talk to people that I really think I can help. So I'm not giving proposals to everyone right now. If I was doing that, my close rate would definitely be lower because I would just be talking to everyone and not everyone would be a good fit and all that stuff. But I'm heavily vetting the people that I'm talking to. And so that begins with the discovery call. And then from there, once that discovery call, I figure, it is a good fit. Then we move into the proposal process. So I'm setting myself up for success. I'm kind of rigging the system to a certain extent to only talk to the people that I think are a good fit at the end of the day. So I think that's kind of that's an important piece of this equation, right? Don't just create proposals for everyone, unless, going back to what I said earlier, if you're just starting out, yeah, you should probably do that. But as you start to build, some base there, like you really need to get serious about qualifying the people that you talk to. You don't want to waste your time. Even a small thing I do, which maybe my clients don't want to hear this, but when I have a discovery call and we've agreed for me to create a proposal, okay? And this is just because I've learned so much from past mistakes. I used to build out that whole proposal. Then I say, hey, Joe, go book a call so we can go talk about this proposal, right? Occasionally, a percentage of people just would disappear. They just, for whatever reason, they just, no proposal. They just, they just disappear. So I'm like, okay, so I just spent like a week building this proposal and I couldn't even get them on the phone to talk about it. And so that tells you a few things. Number one, they were price shopping. So they gave you exactly the answer you were looking for, which is good. But what I realized, like, I need to kind of fix this system. So what I did is, instead of doing that, I say, okay, hey, Joe, go book the call to talk about the proposal. And as soon as they book the call on the calendar, I set my calendar so I've got enough leeway. Then I create the proposal. So just a slight tweak doesn't hurt anyone, right? But it just ensures that I'm not wasting my time building out the proposal. So going back to what we were talking about on the proposal side, the reason why that's important is because what I found out is building personalized proposals is way more effective. Just hands down. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. Like your pricing can be pretty similar for most of the services that you offer, but it's more about like the meat in between. So some of the like elements there, number one is I added a section that's like for 3 to 5 SEO opportunities. So I'll do a real quick mini audit. And then I'll show them, like, I'll go through like, okay, here are like 3 to 5 opportunities that I found right away. And like, they're not like stupid little opportunities like, hey, go, update your title tag. No, it's like real hardcore stuff. Like if they could technically do it themselves and get results like from that proposal to that level. And I just found that works so much better because I get an opportunity to kind of demonstrate my expertise right there on the spot. So giving value in the proposal. And then it's like, kind of like, okay, yeah, like, this person knows more than us, therefore we shouldn't try to do this ourselves. That's kind of what you're trying to prove to them in that, part of the proposal. And then also having relevant social proof, I think is very important. So like this is why going back to like niching down is so important, because if you're just selling to chiropractors, you have just chiropractor focused social proof and stories and case studies. It's much easier to close deals than to say, hey, you're a chiropractor? Well, take a look at our HVAC company that we got results for. And they're like, okay, that sounds good, but that's not really us. Even though we all know realistically SEO is about the same for every business. So, but to them, it feels very different. So yeah, there's just a lot of, this is a big topic, but I think in general, like personalization is big. I think it helps a lot. So.
Awesome. And would you say that, because you've got a big personal brand, you've got a load of subscribers on YouTube, big following on LinkedIn, would you say that those clients that you are chatting to before the proposal, do you think they go and do the social proof on you? Do you think building that personal brand is advantageous to you on that?
Well, I would argue it's basically everything at this point. Yeah, because I pretty much only run organically. So anything that I sell runs basically 100% organic. And that organic engine stems from a lot of my content, right? So there is this goes back to like the close rate, and there's a massive advantage. This is also like in my academy, for example. People don't just randomly find my academy. They don't just maybe through Google, they stumble upon it and stuff like that. But the reality is probably about 50 to 60% of the people that joined my program had watched many, many hours of video before they joined. And so like YouTube, for example, it will blow any other channel out of the water. I'm sorry. It's not even close. Even Google SEO. And I love Google SEO, by the way. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the best channels. YouTube is light years ahead as far as getting people to know, like, and trust you at a level that you could never replicate through text. Especially like on LinkedIn or X or the like more micro content platforms, they don't stand a chance against YouTube. And that's why all my time, like my entire Monday is just YouTube. I don't do anything else. It's literally like, this is my YouTube day, because nothing else in the business is as impactful as me just publishing a video on YouTube. It's not even close. So the answer is it's huge, absolutely huge. And in fact, even Rankability, we're about a year in and we're over 20,000 MRR in the first year. And like and it's funny when we started, people are like, oh, well, how are you different than Surfer and how are you different than Phrase? And they start, people always do stuff like that when you start things. But the thing is, it didn't matter. I didn't need to prove how we were different, because all I had to do was show people how to get results with the tool, because the tool is just a vehicle to get an outcome. And so what I do in my videos is, as if you watch any of my videos, I don't directly like promote Rankability. I'm not like, hey, go to rankability.com and get your free trial. Like, none of that stuff is happening. All I'm doing is just like, hey, here's how to rank #1 on Google. Rankability is a tool that you use in your process. And that's it. That's all I do to promote it. And so for me, that's the way I quote unquote sell, is I just like help people get a result. And then a percentage of those people want to work with me at a deeper level, right? And it's funny when you look at the percentage, like I actually did this math recently. If you look at how many views I get on my YouTube channel compared to how many people actually go deeper in, like, become a customer in one way or another, it's so minuscule. It's insane. Like, cause I get like, I think last month I got like 100,000 views on YouTube in 1 month. And it was like 0.004% of my total views, right? Like, it's like barely anything. So it shows like you do need to do a lot to get that there. But it also, like I said, depends on how focused your channel is and your brand is. So yeah, because I'm casting kind of a wide net. So yeah.
Awesome. And I know for a fact listeners are going to be motivated to get into YouTube now. So my next question is, Nathan, what advice would you give for agency owners starting a YouTube channel?
Wow, I'm going to sound like a broken record here because I've been kind of on this strain here on this call here, but banking your channel really niche down, really niche down. I think it's a huge mistake. And of course, I know it's very, it's real rich coming from me with my broad SEO channel to say this, but I don't think it's wise to go broad, at least initially, because you're going to be competing with so many people. And if you try to do like, all right, I'm going to go and publish a video about on-page SEO, like, good luck, because you're going to be competing against Ahrefs, Neil Patel, and many other big YouTube channels in the SEO space. And not to say it's impossible. Like, you could, if you came with something really killer, you could certainly do it. But like, how many different ways can we talk about on-page SEO? Like, let's be honest here. Like it's pretty, like, there's not a whole lot of new things that we can add to that discussion ultimately. So I would say don't go that route, because you just be fighting an absolute uphill battle. What I can tell you is, like, here's how you can beat me. Seriously, like, if you want to beat me or any of the other people, this is how I would beat myself. Is I would take the stuff that I've talked about on my channel and I would make it niche down. You beat me all day, because I can't go that niche anymore, right? Like, I can't all of a sudden on my channel be like, now I'm going to talk about SEO for chiropractors. I can't, like, that I just alienated like 95% of my audience just like with one video. So I'd get crushed, and that just wouldn't really make a lot of sense at this point. So if you're a new channel, the best thing to do is get hyper focused. And I would basically stay in one lane for 100 videos. I wouldn't even, just don't chase the shiny objects. Don't chase the views. Just get focused. Like, no, I'm going to become the go-to SEO expert for chiropractors. And like, I'm telling you, it is so wide open for this. It's not even funny. It is like, you can go into the most competitive niche down SEO channel. Okay. Like, let's say like, we could have a debate about what's the most competitive, like, SEO vertical, meaning like to do SEO in. I would say personal injury is up there. Personal injury is probably in the top 5 as far as, like, if you go to try to rank in Chicago for personal injury lawyer, like, you are going to need a lot of money. It's going to be really hard. So, but like, take the most competitive industry where the most agencies are trying to win business, and then go on YouTube and look up like personal injury SEO videos. Like, you're going to find like maybe 3 channels. Like, we're talking the most competitive, like maybe 3 channels, and they're doing okay at best. They're not even really creating content. Like, they're probably just like posting testimonials from their clients, which don't do that on YouTube. Like, YouTube is not a place to post bottom of the funnel content. Like, no one goes to YouTube to learn, like, watch your testimonial from your client. Like, the people only go to YouTube for 2 things: to be entertained or to learn. And like, that is it. So you can basically put any successful video into those 2 categories, Very rarely are people going there to look at your bottom of the funnel type of stuff. Like it just isn't the case. So I would say for a new channel, like get hyper focused and just stay in that lane for a long time until you've completely exhausted. And the reason I say 100, it's not a magical number. It's just because I know that I don't want to say it's impossible, but I really believe it's almost impossible that if you publish 100 videos in one niche around one service offering, that you would not get clients. I mean, it's like you would have to be really, really bad. I mean, to the point where like you're publishing like the worst videos on the planet. I mean, it's so impossible to not, because I know the large majority of people will never do it. They'll never publish 100 videos. Because after the first video, when they're not famous, they give up. So it's kind of the way it is. And like, if you look at my channel, I've literally showed this on my, like my social media profiles before, like from 2017 to like 2019, I was getting I had days where I got like 6 views on my entire channel, but not just one vid, like my whole channel got 6 views in one day. So like when you see those numbers, it's hard to want to keep going. Right? You're like, man, 6 views, yikes. I don't know if this is a good idea, but that I'm telling you, like that moment where you're like, I think it's quitting time. Like when that crosses your mind, and if you just agree with it, it's over. And this has happened to me throughout all my businesses. Like even with Gotch SEO Academy, we started doing these weekly coaching calls, Tuesday and Thursday, twice a week. I've done like over 400 of them now. But when I first started them, I am not kidding, we'd have like 3 people on the call. It'd be like, okay, guys, here's a first coaching call that, here, 3 people. So, that's it. And then it was like that for like weeks and weeks and weeks. We'd have 3, 5, 4 people. It was like sad. It was really sad. And like, I talked to my partner, be like, are we sure? Like, should we keep doing this? And like, all right, I'm going to go to 100 and I'm going to see what happens. And of course, now we've got 40 people on every call. Right. So I just think that's half the battle, is just not quitting too early. So at least give yourself a fair shot before you quit. Like at least give it a real run. So anyway, that's more mindset than anything, but I think it matters. So
awesome, man. I love that stuff. I love that a lot. My last question for you, Nathan, is what's next for Nathan? What are you up to? What are you planning for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's just really hyper focus on helping the main ideal client profile that I help the best, which is agencies. So like even for Rankability, we're heavily focused on content optimization and the content side of SEO, but like our long-term goal is to build more solutions for agencies specifically. So that's kind of the route that we're going. And, we're thinking 7, 10 years from now type of plan. So because it's expensive and hard to do SaaS, let's just say that much. I mean, we've blown a lot of money on this tool, scary amounts, where we both look at it and we're like, whoa, okay. It's like pretty scary. But it's worth it because we're confident that it is going to help people ultimately. And that's why we're doing it. So yeah, for me, it's focus on Rankability, focus on the Academy. And SEO to me is just one element of what we do. And I think it's going to, obviously it is changing. It's always changing at this point. But I think kind of the core principles are going to stay, which is like websites and businesses need traffic. Therefore, we're going to have work to do. So that's the way I think about it. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. And Nathan, where can people follow along on your journey? Where can they find you?
I mean, yeah, you could go. YouTube's probably the best place because it's where I publish consistently. So Nathan Gotch channel. You can also go to gotchseo.com where you can see most of the stuff that I offer. So, yep.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that video and got some kind of value from it. If you did, please make sure to leave a comment in the comment section and let me know any feedback that you have for future videos. And of course, hit that subscribe button because we will be releasing videos every single week. So you're going to want to stick around. Thank you and see you in the next one.